Hi, I'm Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 86 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. This week we're going to be revisiting the Amiga 2000. Well, in all honesty, we're going to be revisiting pieces of several Amiga 2000s. I actually owned 3 of them. The first one I got back in about 2004. I picked up an Amiga 4000, two Amiga 4000s, a towerized Amiga 3000, an Amiga 2000, and a bunch of parts, including video toasters. $500. Can you imagine that today, getting all those machines for $500? Well, those days are gone, and now an Amiga 4000 goes for $2,000 on its own. So this Amiga 2000, it ran fine. I hooked it up, I played with it for a little while. It had a toaster in it, it had a couple of hard drives. It was used in a video production studio. But in 2006, I put it away in storage, and there it sat until 2018 in storage. So when I got back into the Amiga in 2018 and started up this channel you're watching now, I pulled my trusty Amiga 2000 out of storage, dead as a doornail. The Varta battery had been removed long before, in the early 2000s, but it had already leaked before I got it, and that yuck, that vile corrosion had made its way up to the CPU and to the ROM socket and just killed both of them. Now I managed to score another Amiga 2000 back in late 2018, early 2019 from a gentleman in Illinois. Here's a video link to my video on unboxing and getting that little beauty working. That machine ended up working fine, and I now use it as my Amiga 2000, my main Amiga 2000 with my video toaster in it, and it's a really nice machine. Here's a link to the video all about the video toaster. The third and final Amiga 2000 came from an eBay seller in Texas, and let me tell you, she was pretty banged up. The Amiga 2000, not the eBay seller, she was fine. It had the battery still in it, and of course it had leaked. I got it to boot one single time to kickstart, one time, and after that she never booted again. And so I just don't have the soldering skills to dig into it and clean these boards and fix traces. So I ended up sending both of the boards away to be repaired. So today we're going to take a look at the Amiga machines that I have that are currently in parts and pieces and build a couple of really nice Amiga 2000s out of them now that they're back and the motherboards are both physically functioning. This is not going to be one of my typical videos. This is going to be a let's build video where I take the pieces and parts and we put them all together and make us some working Amigas. It's probably going to span several episodes. Now, a little history about the Amiga 2000. It's an interesting beast. The original Amiga 1000, like this little beauty that you see right here, this was an elegant machine designed to be tight and compact and look really good on anybody's desk. The Amiga 500, which you see a picture of right here, a nice slick wedge-shaped machine that was really designed to replace the aging Commodore 64 as Commodore's flagship machine. Beautiful little beast. The Amiga 2000, on the other hand, was built as a giant beast of a machine with glorious, unlimited, modular expansion. Now, the core of the Amiga 2000 came from Commodore Germany, where they were working on some type of 16-bit machine that wasn't the Amiga, and they had this case, and you've maybe seen pictures of it. I'll see if I can bring a picture up here of some of these predecessors to the Amiga 2000 that use a very similar case. Now, Dave Haney in the States, you guys all know Dave Haney here, he got a hold of this technology, and him and his team reworked it into the Amiga 2000. Now just look at this monster case here. This thing is huge. When fully assembled, she weighs someplace between 40 and 1 million pounds. There's room for 2 3.5-inch devices in the front and one 5.25-inch device down at the bottom, like a CD-ROM or a 5.25-inch drive. It's surprising, considering how much physical space there is inside the computer, that there aren't more internal drive bays in there. So let's go take a look at all the bits and pieces I have for our Amiga 2000 project. But don't tell my wife, because I just cluttered up the dining room table with Amiga 2000 stuff, and she won't be pleased if she sees this video. Now here are the guts of my Amiga 2000s that we're going to be working on. These are the interiors of the cases, and here you see the drive trays where the floppy goes, and maybe a hard drive or a second floppy. Power supply goes back there, and then there's a 5 1/4 tray, and these end up fitting along the top over here with the power supply facing out the back. Now these are the power supplies. I don't have any idea what condition these two power supplies are in. They could be good, they could be bad, but ultimately what I want to do is replace these with a couple of ATX power supplies. There's a method you can use to steal an ATX power supply, put it in here, and get it up and running. But in the short term, I'm going to test these out, see if they work, and hook them up using the existing power supplies. Here are the lovely yet filthy cases. You'll see the bottom one is labeled Amiga 2000, and the top one is labeled Amiga 2000 HD. Just means it came with probably the 2090 hard drive controller. The cases are in pretty good shape. Colors are a little bit different on them, just different generations of Amiga, and both of them need a good bath to get them nice and clean. Let's take a look at the two motherboards right now. I have one of them. The first one is an older 4.1 series motherboard, and the second one is a newer 6.2 series motherboard. There's some subtle differences between the two of them. Both of them are missing a couple of chips. This one's missing a Paula chip, and it's missing the CPU and a ROM chip and the Agnes. This one is only missing the Agnes, but I do have an Agnes to put in here. As a matter of fact, I think I have all the chips to get both of these fully populated. Let's take a closer look at the boards in general and see what we have with our Amiga 2000s. Now, the big thing about the Amiga 2000 is the expandability of the little guy. We'll start over here with what's called the video slot. This passes all of the signals through from the Commodore chipset, from the nice OCS ECS chipset. This will handle things like gen locks, upscalers, and the wonderful video toaster. And it just lines up, and the card sits right on the right side of the case and is so tight usually there's not even a millimeter to spare. Over here we see the CPU slot. This is the actual 68,000 CPU right here, but there's a CPU slot that is designed for accelerators. So you could put 6820, 6830, 040, or even an 060 accelerator in here, oftentimes containing their own 32-bit fast RAM and their own Scuzzy Controller to really make this thing fly. There were literally dozens of options available for the CPU slot. Now over here we see the Zorro slots, and you see they're in the back. This would be the back of the computer here. So they're up in the front, not in the back like you would assume normal slots would be. Now Zorro 2 slots were, I believe, the creation of Dave Haney and his crew. And these were plug and play before plug and play was cool. Now on a PC, you would be dealing, when you had to put an expansion slot in there, a card in there, you'd be dealing with I/O ports, IRQs, DMA channels, both on hardware where you'd have to flip some jumpers, and in the software of the machine itself. On the Amiga, we had this cool technology called auto config, where it would set up its address spaces. The system would recognize the card, understand basically what it is automatically. I still had to load drivers on there for it, but it made it about a cajillion times easier than a PC expansion card. Not to say Amiga cards did not have jumpers, because they did. Sometimes you'd have to flip a jumper to turn Scuzzy on or off, or turn the FPU on or off. But setting address lines and everything like that, we didn't bother with that. Now the Zorro slots, they're 16-bit slots. They have a theoretical speed of about 14 megabytes per second, but a real practical speed because of other hardware considerations of about 3.5 megabytes per second. So they were slower than ISA cards, but they were also superior to ISA cards in other ways. Now you'll notice these two Zorro slots are right in line with these two slots here. Now those are actually standard 16-bit PC ISA slots that are right in line with the Zorro slots. And the idea was you would take something like the bridge board here and see how we have a Zorro slot here, and then we have a 16-bit ISA extension right here. That would fit right into all of those slots and literally bridge the systems together so the Amiga and the PC side of things could communicate. Really very clever. Now these ISA slots were not accessible from the Amiga side of things without a bridge board. All they could do is supply power to cards. But once you put a bridge board in there, it activates the slots, and the Amiga could even theoretically share data with things on the ISA bus. Now normally an Amiga 2000, like this 4.1 board right here, has two 16-bit slots and two boring 8-bit slots. But you see they have these headers on here to put the 16-bit extensions on here. Well, when I had this board in for repair, I had the guy put the 16-bit headers on here, so I now have 4 16-bit fully usable ISA slots in here, which is going to make the combination of my bridge board really awesome, because I can put a 16-bit video card, 16-bit Sound Blaster in here, and really make a cool 386 machine out of this. Now realistically, if they had designed this to not be in line with ISA slots, which are required to be at the back, they could have put Zorro up in the back here and probably made the Amiga 2000 to be about 1/3 less in size. They could have put everything together and made it a much smaller machine. But they didn't do it, so we're stuck with big, long Zorro cards, and this is also why all of our Zorro cards are full-length cards, not half-length cards like on PCs. Now the Amiga 2000 originally had a 512K Agnes chip, so it's 1 megabyte of memory, 512 fast, 512 chip. Later generations came with a 1 meg Agnes, so the full 1 megabyte on here was chip RAM, which was nice. That's what I'm going to be putting in here, is a 1 megabyte Agnes. It usually shipped with a standard Denise chip, but you could add the ECS Denise, and later models came with ECS Denise. Of course, you've got your standard Paula, your standard Gary, your standard ROM socket that could handle anything from a 1.2 up to a 3.1.4 ROM. Speaking of ROMs, what I'm probably going to do here is put my ROMulator in here. I could put just an Amiga 3.1 ROM or 3.14 ROM in here, but I may just put the ROMulator in there and see how she does. And I'll put a link in the description here to my ROMulator video so you can learn all about it. On the front, that would be right here on the case, we've got our two 9-pin mouse and keyboard, or mouse and joystick ports, and our standard Amiga 2000 keyboard port. Now it is a little odd to have those sticking right out the front, right out of the front of the case, but it absolutely works. I kind of like my Amiga 3000 a little better, where it's on the side, the cables aren't sticking right out at you, but this is perfectly usable and functional. Now by default, the Amiga 2000 does not have a hard drive controller, but it does have a floppy controller, which is right there. So what are we going to do for a floppy? Well, I could use an actual floppy that I have. I've got a couple of them that probably work, but for fun, I'm going to put in a nice Gotek drive. Now, many of you are familiar with Gotek drives. If not, I'll link you up to my review of the Gotek drives. These are nice little units that are designed to emulate floppy drives, and they've got code on it to emulate an Amiga drive. You just take a flash drive and you put ADF files on here, plug the flash drive in. You can see the name right here on this OLED screen of what file you're looking at, and it works as a floppy drive, and it should mount in here just fine and look okay, not too bad. For hard drive access, since there is no integrated hard drive, I could use any one of these Zorro cards. Now this is a Zorro, this is the 2090 hard drive controller, which is just a basic hard drive controller. It can handle 1 or up to 7 drives, but a limit of 1 gigabyte in size per drive total. And it's very, very slow, like painfully slow. So we'll pass on that. I've also got an A2000, which is the improved model of it, which has a hard card expansion, which means you can actually put a hard drive right there, mount it right to the card. This also has the benefit of having 2 megabytes of fast RAM, and this card actually works quite well. I can get about 2 to 3 megabytes per second speed out of this little guy. Here we have an Octagon 2008. This is a Scuzzy controller, a little bit faster Scuzzy controller than the 2091. It also has up to 8 megabytes of RAM on here. Now I had an issue with this. I used this in my Checkmate Amiga 500 case, Stephen Jones case, with the Zorro adapter, and it would crash a lot. It would work okay, but I'd get some frequent crashing that would stop as soon as I took the Octagon out. So I want to see if it's the Octagon that's bad or the fact that it was trying to work with an Amiga 500 with a Zorro adapter. I'll use this on my build, and if this crashes and is unreliable, I'll switch over to my 2091 controller. No problem at all. And what we're going to use for the Scuzzy drive, instead of trying to track down a 50-pin Scuzzy drive, we're going to use a Scuzzy to SD from our friends at Inertial Computing. Now this is a little PCB on a little 3D printed mount that allows you to put an SD card in here of almost any size that your controller supports, and it will view this as an actual Scuzzy drive. Performance is good, between 2 and 3 megabytes per second is about the max you're ever going to see out of it, which is fine for most Amiga 2000s because most of the controllers don't handle more than that. Now I did a video on the Scuzzy to SD full review and installation. Take a look right there and you will find the video. Now if I use the Romulator, like I mentioned before, for my kickstart, I could have multiple kickstarts on there and switch between them with a little on-screen menu. And you'll see my little Romulator video. I think I've already linked to that. That also means I could use multiple SD cards. I could have one SD card with Amiga OS 1.3 on it, pop it out, put a 3.1.4 SD card in there, and it would boot to 3.1.4. The caveat is with this version, which is the 5.2 version, is that the drives themselves would have to be exactly the same. So I'm going to use 4 gigabyte drives. I'm going to have them formatted exactly the same so I can switch between operating systems just by unplugging and plugging in a new drive. It should be kind of cool. Now when I replace the power supplies, the Amiga 2000 gets what's called a tick signal, which is a timing signal from the Amiga 2000 power supplies. Modern power supplies don't supply that signal. So there's a jumper on the board called J300 where you can switch between tick from the power supply to a tick signal from VSync, which I think comes from Denise. So make sure if you use your own power supply in your Amiga 2000 build to switch over to VSync for the tick signal on jumper 300. Now for video, we're going to be sticking to standard ECS video from our beautiful Denise, mainly because I want to use this Super Gen 2000 Genlock in our new build. Now this is a really, really nice Genlock. You see it's got some control devices available with it too. This should work beautifully in this Amiga 2000 for doing some cool video work. Now, I tried this in my Amiga 3000, but literally the Zorro card was too long and it literally would not fit in it. It needs a giant monster case like the Amiga 2000 to fit. Now, we also want to get the Amiga Online, not so much for web browsing, but so I can do, FTP between my Amigas and between my PC, things like that. I did an episode on FTP on the Amiga a few weeks ago. I'll see if I can't link it here. Now, I could use something like this Commodore A2065 Ethernet card, but it only has this BNC and this older style connector here, not a standard Ethernet connector. Now there are adapters available where you can adapt either one of those directly to Ethernet, and then these cards work fine, but the ones I find are like $100, and I don't want to spend $100 just to get an adapter when I can use something like a plip box here that plugs right into the parallel port and works with an Arduino device to give your Amiga, any of your Amigas, actual network connectivity. These are like 40 or 50 bucks. Worth it. So we have a plan here for our Amiga 2000 project. We're going to use the 6.2 board, since it's more modern and it has the actual 16-bit ISA slots on it. It's going to go into the 2000 HD case. We're going to put in the Octagon Scuzzy Controller with 8 megs on it to give it nice fast Scuzzy. See how stable it is with that. We're going to put a Kickstart ROMulator in there that I've reviewed before, so we can switch between different ROMs if we want to do different fun projects. For the expansion cards, we're going to put in the Digital Creations Genlock, which should be a lot of fun to be able to do some cool Genlock projects. We're going to put in the A2386 bridge board with some really cool items like a VGA card and maybe a Sound Blaster card and a multi-IO card, give it its own hard drive to play with. We'll have a lot of fun with that, with the bridge board. And I'll probably dig out some other cards to put in this little beauty too. We'll just see what we can find. Now, before I start putting it together in the next episode, I'm going to test these power supplies, make sure they work. If not, we'll work on getting replacements. I'm going to clean these cases because they're yucky and filthy, but you don't need to watch me putting them in the sink and cleaning these little puppies out. And I'm going to get things prepped, make sure I've got all my screws in order and everything like that. Maybe get some new screws if I need to. I would like to thank my patrons for their wonderful support. You can see this beautiful list of patrons. There they are right there. Hey guys. If you'd like to join this prestigious list of patrons that help support my channel, pop on over to patreon.com/10mark. Little as $2 a month. Which direction? This way. You can be on this list. Thanks for spending some time with me today. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. I'm this far away from 4,000 subscribers. I'm really excited about that. That's going to be a fun milestone. Please comment below. Tell me about your Amiga 2000. Tell me about what you did with it, how you expanded the daylights out of that puppy. Also, if you've got any ideas on things I should do with my Amiga 2000, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear all about your ideas about what I should do with my Amiga 2000. I've got some ideas, and I bet they match some of your ideas. But until next time, this is Doug from 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out. I'm on the wrong side. Which way am I signing out to? There's no monitor to sign out to. I'm so confused.